everybody.
Hi there.
And welcome to
EVIL Asterisk Podcast
with Jeannie
and Louise.
We saw
Iron Lung.
Well, it's the talk of the town right now.
Oh yeah. It's scaring everyone and giving a lot of other people hope.
Yes. In addition to the movie itself, the story behind the film is exciting and hopeful. It's a little controversial, as we've seen. Markiplier, who is a very well-known YouTuber, he's been around for a while, he fell in love with this game, Iron Lung, which was created by David Szymanski, solo dev, in 2022. So what's interesting about this is that David Szymanski is a solo game developer. Markiplier is almost a solo filmmaker. I mean, he did assemble a wonderful team for this film, but he did a lot on his own.
He wrote, directed, was the lead actor. He edited it.
Yeah, produced it. Amazing.
Yes.
And I should also say his real name is Mark Fischbach. So he has that name appear in various places associated with the film, but he goes by Markiplier. I'll first do what I normally do, which is to read the IMDb description. In a post-apocalyptic future after the Quiet Rapture event, a convict explores a blood ocean on a desolate moon using a submarine called the Iron Lung to search for missing stars and planets. All right, so that's the IMDb description, and here are the genres. Body horror, folk horror, monster horror, psychological horror, space sci-fi, supernatural horror, just plain horror, and just plain sci-fi. And we are going to add another moniker to this list, cosmic horror.
Eldritch horror.
And of course, that is a Lovecraft reference. We're big Lovecraft fans. I've read every single Lovecraft story ever written, as far as I know.
And I'm in the middle of reading an omnibus that collects every single one of his short stories and novels or whatever, going back to it when he was something like 11 or 12 years old, which is pretty wild.
That is wild. There are a lot of great things about this movie. At the same time, we do have some criticisms. Be kind to us. I'm joking.
Well, it does help that we understand game development and we understand the game industry.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating how there's this new generation of filmmakers who grew up playing games and who are basically, a lot of them from YouTube, and are now becoming the new independent horror auteurs in Hollywood. And a lot of them are making movies outside of the Hollywood system.
The Australian YouTubers / filmmakers, Danny and Michael Filippo, hopefully I've got that right. But in any case, I think they're twins. They directed Talk to Me and Bring Her Back.
Yes.
Which were amazing
Thank
films.
you so much.
Talk
and
to
not
Me.
just YouTubers making movies, but also movies being based on small games. We're talking about independent games, indie games becoming films. There's The Mortuary's Assistant, which is just about to hit. And there's Exit 8, which already came out in Europe and Japan.
And it will be here soon.
This whole idea that you can have small creators, solo developers, making games on their own, and then they find another small creator, or maybe someone who's big on YouTube, but small in the eyes of Hollywood or of media or whatever. And they join forces, and they come up with something new. And that's what makes Iron Lung so special. It's something that, as far as I understand, we've never seen before. We've never seen a YouTuber with 40 million subscribers join forces with a small developer, and together they further explore the lore. Together they bring a small game to the mainstream. Together they kind of reinvent the rules of what it is to make a movie. Not only that, but Mark distributed it. He's only paying 50% of the box office to the movie theaters. Everything else is his. And when he started, he had something like maybe 20 theaters. So Mark's wife built a website that allows people to find where the movie is showing, and if it isn't, link them directly to the request forms for each chain, saying, hey, I want you to show Iron Lung. So little by little, they started building up this number, and as far as I know, it's 4,000 plus theaters that the small movie premiered at. And he won the first day in the box office. It beat Send Help.
It did. It beat the Sam Raimi movie, send help.
Which is insane. While a small movie for Sam Raimi, it still costs something like 80 million or 90 million.
Right.
So it's like 3 million versus, let's say, 90, and Iron Lung, day one, #1 movie in the country. Of course, for the weekend, Send Help barely won.
I know we're doing a lot of preliminary stuff here. We should talk about the film itself, but I did want to make it clear that I guess he had a $3 million production budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he already surpassed, I guess in the first weekend, 17 million.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the key here. So not even comparing it to Sam Raimi, we're looking at a major amount of revenue and return. And like you said, his wife put together this wonderful site that allowed everybody to request the film at various theaters. So that was really important. His fans turned out for him. Of course, curmudgeons and sour grapes people might go, well, he was famous and that's why he was able to make this work. But you're not understanding the point here. He tried to get distribution. He met with people in the industry and various companies that shall remain unnamed. And they all said, no, we're not going to help you out. We're not going to distribute your film. Poo-poo on you. And he didn't take no for an answer, and he went DIY. My whole thing is DIY. I'm all about doing it yourself, not relying on everybody else to allow for your own creative expression. You should be able to express yourself creatively, especially with all the tools that we have at our disposal these days. Of course, making a movie and having $3 million out of pocket is not something that everybody has. We get that. But on a much smaller scale, we can all do this. We can all bypass whatever system we want to bypass and put our movies up. When we started talking about this film and letting people know that we were going to have this as part of our podcast, we got some interesting results. We got people saying, oh, I put my movie up on YouTube. I wasn't going to wait for a distributor. So we've got other people saying, yeah, I've done that too, but I had practically no money. Okay, great, you did it. And then we had other curmudgeons saying, well, he's got a bunch of money. That's why he's famous. That's why he did well. That's why the movie did well. That is not true. So he's a YouTuber who's well known. How did it get that way? DIY. Did he have someone hand something to him on a platter so that he could amass the audience that he's amassed? Let's talk about that. People just start with that and they say, oh yeah, he's famous. Okay, well, how did he get famous? Again, he did it himself. So there's my argument.
The specific person who made that comment, what they were kind of harping on was the fact that it wasn't a guaranteed success because of Markiplier's 40 million subscribers, which I disagree. I expected it to be bad. We just got AMC A-list and we're seeing all kinds of movies and we already got burned on one of them. I thought I was going to get burned again. As much as I love indie horror, sometimes you get some stinkers and that's the way it is. And if they're not so bad it's good, now you're in trouble. So I wasn't sure what we're going to deal with. And I saw complaints about the sound mix and this and that. It's like, oh my God. And we just decided to do it because it's a very important film. We had to see it.
So you saw the film. What this person was saying is that people will see the film because of the amount of followers that he has. We weren't in his major fan base, even though we really like what he does, and he does a lot of horror stuff, which we're going to follow him more closely now. But the point is that we saw it anyway. I think the bigger issue is what happened after the opening weekend. Did it fall off? Did it continue to do well?
Well, it fell off a little bit. It went down something like 66% or close to it, which is normal for most movies. They have that kind of drop off on the second weekend. But by a week and a half into release, it had made about 30 million globally. Okay. So he 10x'd his budget within the first week and a half. It's probably even better now. Okay. It's still selling well. There's still sold out screenings from time to time. Okay. So he could 20x his budget on this.
So the key here is that he didn't take no for an answer. He did it himself. And I think he made some really interesting choices. First of all, he took an existing IP. He partnered with the developer as co-writer. So David Szymanski and Mark Fischbach, aka Markiplier, worked together on this. He was smart enough to not start from scratch and write his own script out of something that came out of his head. He was already a fan of this game and wanted to make a movie based on it and extend the lore a little bit. So he and David worked together on that part. He was smart enough to also choose a project that allowed for one set, basically inside what is known as the Iron Lung. It's a submarine that is attached to a space station that gets lowered down into, in this case, a particular moon that is covered with an ocean of blood to explore what might be lurking in that ocean. So knowing that, we're looking at a small contained space. He is the main actor. That could have been the thing that tanked the movie, but it didn't because he was good.
Yeah.
So he made that decision. You know what? I'm going to be the main character in this. I'm going to be the protagonist. I am going to have it remain in this setting, which is basically what the game's about anyway. So that works. I'm going to adapt an existing IP. I'm not going to try to do something completely on my own. I'm going to adapt it. So he made that a very good choice there. And I'm going to have a limited cast. So he's there, of course. And then there are other cast members, but very limited group of people. It's basically him in this almost pod-like atmosphere, which is this submarine. Those were all really good choices. Let's say mixed reviews on the sound design. I don't know why, because as a composer and somewhat sound designer myself, I was impressed, actually, and I usually am not. It takes a lot to impress me. I think it was so unusual what was going on in the sound that a lot of people were wondering if it was intentional, and I felt that it was intentional. There was a lot going on where you weren't sure what you were trying to hear, and you were trying to keep different voices in your head, but the correct voice that you're supposed to hear was coming out at the time that you were supposed to hear it. I thought that worked out really well. I liked the music, a feeling of dread, a feeling of anticipation. All of that worked really well. We actually saw Markiplier, his original playthrough or let's play of Iron Lung, the game, which was kind of cool because as he's moving through the game, you realize he's starting to fall in love with it. At first he was like, I don't know about this. Then he is completely on board. So we're seeing this and we see the replication of that game in the movie. Various game-like aspects. I would say that the first part of the movie, some people complain about it being kind of monotonous or redundant, but the key there is that all of the mechanics that are used in the game itself are very much on display in that first part of the movie. I would say maybe the first third.
Yeah, the game and the movie are set up basically the same way. Many, many years in the future, over 300 to maybe 500 years in the future, humanity has explored space. We have spaceships, we have space stations, we have a colony on Mars even. And then something happens that is called the quiet rapture, where entire planets and stars just kind of pop out of existence. Needless to say, that's a traumatic thing because not only the sky is literally changing in front of you, whether you're in a spaceship, whether you're in a space station, people are dying. They're blinking out of existence. So 99% of humanity or more, it's gone.
So the only ones left are people that were on space stations. I guess that was a very small portion of humanity.
Tiny. Because who else is going to be in a space station or a spacecraft compared to entire populations on planets?
Well, I mean, I guess there isn't a lot of space exploration. It's not like Star Trek. You kind of assume sometimes in these fantasy worlds that everybody's exploring space. You kind of get this feeling that there are a lot of people out there. But yeah, it's a very sparse group of people.
Yeah, because if you think about, we're going back to the moon, I think, this year or next year. NASA has announced it. So let's say in 30 years we built a colony on the moon. How many people are going to be on the moon in a colony? I don't know. Maybe there's 2 million people. There's a lot of people on the moon. Mm-hmm. Well, the moon disappeared. Earth disappeared. So they're all gone. The only people who didn't disappear are people who are in transit or
exploring
or on a station. So it's an infinitesimal amount of people that survived. And not only that, but then suddenly these moons show up.
They just show up out of nowhere.
Yeah, they weren't there before.
Right, and there's no explanation for that. Where do these moons come from? 5 moons?
They didn't say.
I remember someone saying
in the lore
there
somewhere.
was a certain number. Let's just say there were a handful of moons. One in particular they're interested in. One that has an ocean of blood. So they had somehow figured out that there was blood. If there's blood, there must be some life somewhere for there to be any sort of blood. We don't know what the blood is, what it's made of, why is it called blood. We're just using that term. But we need to know what's going on, and we need to explore it. Now, Simon, the main character played by Markiplier, is a convict. He's a prisoner. He was accused of a mass killing in an uprising on a different space station called Filament. The one that is associated with the submarine that he's on is called Eden. He's always saying, I've been a scapegoat. I did not do this. They're blaming me for this mass killing, but I didn't have anything to do with it. You tend to want to agree with him because he's the main character and he's grounding the film for you. He has no idea what's going on. Why am I in here? And you don't either. But he's been told that he's tasked with this and he is sealed, let's say, into this iron lung. And I guess the reason why it's called an iron lung is it's a small submarine? Or is it just that there's no way out? Or
I think it's called an iron lung for a couple of reasons. So Simon is welded shut in the iron lung. There's no decompression chamber, there's no door. It's a weld. That's it. Metaphorically, of course, we think about real life iron lungs, where people who can't breathe outside need to be on some sort of almost like a hyperbaric chamber with a higher pressure that does the breathing for them. And in this case, I think it really means that humanity is not able to exist anywhere else in the world other than space stations and spacecraft. And now in a small submarine that's exploring an ocean of blood. Mm-hmm. So iron lung translates the fact that we are not fit for the world anymore, that we have nowhere to go, and the only place we can exist is in an enclosed environment like that.
Right. And the only form of communication he has right now is there's a speaker on the...
Yeah, there's umbilical cables that connect the submarine to the space station above. And I think in those cables you have also a wire for voice. Mm-hmm. Like Jeannie said, there's a tiny speaker, which is really funny looking, on top of the ship.
Some of the design is steampunk-esque.
Yeah, because the game itself is basically a low-poly PS1 era graphics.
Right.
So it's what's really cool how Mark respected that. And when he went and made that real, like Jeannie said, he made it steampunk-ish while respecting the nature of the game itself.
Right. So his form of communication is basically the speaker that's hanging in an upper corner of the iron lung. Audio plays such a big part in this movie because of that speaker. You do see who he's speaking with at one point. He rises to the surface. You see him getting pulled up to the space station. He never gets out of the submarine. He's always in the iron lung throughout the entire movie, except for what we'll talk about toward the end. But he never goes into the space station itself. He can only see people through the portal of the submarine when it's been brought to the surface. So he rises to the surface. You see that there's a person behind the voice in the speaker, which is basically Ava. The key here is that most of the movie takes place with just Markiplier in the iron lung, listening to voice contact through the speaker going back and forth. But you do see other people when he's brought to the surface. He does not leave the iron lung, though. He's sealed in. What's interesting about the first part of the film, which a lot of people complain about, and I understand why, is that a lot of the mechanics that are used in the game are being used in the film itself. And if you want to watch someone playing a game, which you could do if you watch Markiplier play the game for the first time, which is very, very cool, like I said, you see that there are certain things that you have to do, certain tasks when you're down there exploring. And that's what he does. So he's supposed to explore this moon that has this ocean of blood. And he's supposed to find out why there's blood there, what's going on, is there life there, and how does he explore it? First, he has to map different coordinates, which you do in the game, part of your strategic tasks. Another task, it's more of a redundant task, but it's interesting, is that after you map a coordinate, you have to take a picture, quote unquote, of what you see. And there's a big screen in the submarine. And when you hit a particular button, and it looks exactly the same as it does in the game, which is kind of cool, you hit that and you see what looks like a black and white, almost sketchy image of what's going on outside. And it might look like moss or worms or bones. And at one point, an actual skeleton and even a face. And that's really scary. That's where the cosmic horror really starts to kick in. But it happens during the first probably third of the film. It's not like they wait on that completely. It's just that there's a lot of times where there's nothing out there. It's very hard to see what's there because you're hitting that button and you're, okay, all right, I'm not sure about this. When you see Markiplier play the game, you kind of see that happening. At first it's like, oh yeah, I'm not sure what's out there. And then you hit it again. It's like, oh my gosh, wait, what is that? You hit the button again after mapping your course. Oh, wait, oh, that looked like a creature. Wait, what's happening here? But what he doesn't know, and this is shown On the ascent, when he comes back up to the surface, he gets frustrated because he doesn't know why he's down there. And they, of course, have him as a prisoner. Luis is going to talk a little bit about why he's frustrated. But at one point, he just hits that button while he's at the surface. And then you see skeletons. And he basically irradiated part of the crew up there in the space station by doing that. Well, he wasn't told that that button actually controlled an X-ray style device. Who knows why they didn't tell him, though. So you're not seeing what's down there. You're seeing the insides of what's down there. And of course, we now see the insides of some crew members, one in particular. But I remember seeing two skulls, one close and one far.
And one got a big dose of radiation, the other
Right.
one didn't. The woman got less. But it's going to hurt her too in the end. The screen for the camera is in the back of the ship with the button next to it. The camera is facing the front of the ship itself. The camera and the X-ray emitter are in the front of the ship, right where the porthole is too, I think. The screen is in the back with the button.
The porthole is also not next to the screen. So it's a little confusing. I think that's a really good point. It was replicating the game, but of course there was no ascent in the game. That was added for the movie, the idea of these other human beings and being able to talk to them. What's weird is when you are making a film, it's almost a directorial issue. In a game, it might not matter as much, but in the game, we didn't have human beings out of a porthole.
And I think there's a diegetic reason why the camera and the button are away from the main controls, and why the computer terminal, likewise, is on the other side of the ship. My guess is that the ship was not made for just one person. There's supposed to be someone just manning the camera at all times, and maybe they do the camera and the computer at the same time, or just the camera and there's a third person that manages the computer, across from the camera, across from each other.
Yeah, I think you have a point there where a variety of people are supposed to be handling different tasks. Another thing I thought that was really interesting is that no one knows the purpose of this button. When this film starts, it seems like he's dropped into something he doesn't understand. He finds a manual, a binder that has papers in it. There's not a lot of information. And that's part of the joke. Looks like an old-fashioned user's manual. And I remember we and the audience were sort of chuckling about that. He sees something that says, press this or button, and then he goes over and presses it and sees what happens when he does, which is basically showing what he thinks is simply a picture of what's outside the submarine. It's not like someone told him to press that.
The movie itself does not portray anyone telling him what to do in that regard. All they say is, we're going to drop you at a certain level, you're going to explore, we mark some areas in your map for you to check out, and we want you to take pictures of what you find. The manual itself does exist, like Jeannie said. Some pages are missing though, or parts are cut off. Like there's an incomplete page, for example. As far as we know, he doesn't find out, or no one told him, that the camera uses X-rays.
No one even told him that there was a button and that you have to press it and then you have to take a quote-unquote picture. He sees that as an instructional page in that manual. It's not like someone told him. We don't know.
That wasn't portrayed.
It wasn't portrayed.
Before he gets sealed shut into a submarine,
I would think so.
someone will tell him that.
But the audience doesn't have that
We don't know.
information, which I think is interesting because not only did they maybe not tell him how to use the controls or almost anything, but they didn't tell him that this was an X-ray device. So, comeuppance on them to get X-rayed. What was he supposed to do? He could have accidentally bumped into the thing too. He basically hit it in anger because he was so frustrated, but he wasn't trying to even take a picture of anything. And then they hadn't told him that there was an X-ray device.
Yeah,
It's
he
weird.
was really pissed because they wouldn't let him out of the ship after he actually took pictures, quote unquote, of the skeletons at the bottom of the ocean. So as they refused to let him out, he raged a little bit and hit the button.
Right. The point is, why wouldn't they have a safety precaution there? When you rise to the surface, maybe the button doesn't work anymore. Right? But also, why not tell him so he doesn't make that mistake? The cast does include David Szymanski as David Szymanski, as himself.
I saw some pictures online and he was on set and he was dressed as one of the crew.
Which would be funny,
Yeah,
right?
he had a tag that said Szymanski.
That's a little piece of information that we should verify, but very cool. So people are complaining a bit about the beginning because it is sort of redundant and it's a lot about taking the pictures, which are actually x-rays, and looking through the manual and plotting a course, which you would do in the game. But what's wonderful about the game is that as you plot your course further, you start putting some pieces together and seeing that there are some bizarre creatures down there, or creature. We're not really sure. And once you realize it's an X-ray, which Simon now knows after he irradiated people on the surface, he goes back down and realizes that he's looking inside a creature or inside various creatures, and it changes the whole feel of the movie. We now know that. So what happens? As the movie continues on, that type of redundancy is happening, but at the same time, there's some really interesting stuff going on with audio, and I feel that having the speaker, which is basically what Simon has at his disposal, he's listening to the team on the surface talk to him, primarily Ava, asking questions like, oh, did you capture the picture of the skeleton? There's supposedly a harpoon-like device that was attached by, I think, the guy that did get irradiated to the submarine, and he's supposed to use that to grab a sample. So once they saw that there were some bones and some stuff down there, which is really a creature, that there's something probably solid around those bones as well, and he needs to grab a sample, so he's got to use that harpoon-like device to grab a sample. That's his goal at this point. So he's trying to do that. While that's happening, he's hearing audio from the team, basically Ava, as I mentioned, but he's also hearing some sound that is sort of a combination of some really interesting drone-like music, but also a little bit of sound effects and gurgling and stuff related to water, but just really the ocean of blood, and some what would be perhaps considered moan-like sounds that are coming from outside. So the sub itself is capturing this otherworldly, eldritch, cosmic sort of horror sound that's emanating from outside the sub.
Exactly, like you would hear a whale if you're in a submarine.
Exactly.
And he hears these monsters or creatures or just one gigantic creature. And at some point, when he's brought to the surface for the first time, that happens because he literally gets attacked by whatever he took a picture of earlier, this skeleton.
Before he took a sample.
Yeah, before the sample, he gets attacked by whatever he was photographing.
And I think that's where they attach the harpoon. That's what they're doing while he's up there.
Yeah, when he goes up the first time, they say, okay, you got these pictures. Oh my God, you found something. You got to go back and get a sample. They assume it's not moving. So just go back to the exact same coordinates, get a sample. If he goes in, he looks for the thing, it's gone.
It's gone.
So now he's searching for other spots and he's navigating. And one thing I wanted to mention about navigation in the game and the movie is that it's not full 3D navigation. There's no X, Y, and Z axis. It's just X and Y. Angle is just a heading. In the game and the movie, the depth is regulated by the space station. So they decide if it's going to be at the bottom of the ocean or if it's going to be taken up a little bit. So the player and the lead character don't decide that. The second dive is just him basically looking for stuff, and then there's a hull breach and the alert, which you hear in an airplane as well, saying hull breach, hull breach.
The sound was really cool. It got different overlapping things going on coming from this particular speaker at the same time. So you've got people on the surface in the space station, let's say, in Eden, talking to him, tasking with stuff, basically Ava. Then you have the whole breach sound that's coming from there.
It's
whole
a
breach, whole breach. Yeah, it's just a voice. Whole breach. And then at another point, you hear some other sounds, and you're not really sure what they are, and they're people talking. And then there's going to be another reason you hear sound, and we'll tell you about that in a moment. But it's all coming from the same place, and they're all overlapping, and I think it was really well done because you only hear what you really need to hear, and you're supposed to question what you're hearing, which I also thought was very interesting.
When he was hearing whole breach, basically he goes and destroys the speaker or tries to destroy it because he's fed up trying to deal with the emergency. And on an airplane, you have a master reset or a caution reset button that you press to tell the airplane, okay, I know something's going on. Stop harassing me. Let me try to deal with it. And in this ship, clearly there isn't a button that he can press to mute the caution. So he goes and bangs on it, a wire disconnects, and now he won't hear either the caution or the surface anymore.
Right. So he basically cuts off communication because he's so frustrated, just like he irradiated someone because he was so frustrated. I can say that Markiplier, because we're talking about the acting, we were impressed because it's not something he's known for, is acting, and he did a good job, a serviceable job, but also there were some moments that were really believable, where the frustration was believable, the feeling of desolation, the feeling of being misunderstood was believable. And it's not an easy thing to do. It had elements of the tour de force because he is the main character and you have to feel for him. He has to ground it for you. And I think he did a good job doing that.
For someone who's never acted professionally in his life, I call it a tour de force. It's the same thing as if me, who only did theater, basically, and one course at UCLA Extension, acting course, did a movie by myself as a lead character and they acted like him, they'll be insane.
Yeah, you'd be very proud of yourself.
Yeah.
I feel like he really held it together.
So, yeah, and being on screen for like 98% of the time, it's just like if I had legs, I'd kick you. Rose Byrne, she was so heart-wrenching that we don't care that she's there all the time. She delivered every second.
I wouldn't compare the two, though.
I know, we wouldn't. But think about a guy who's never acted professionally in his life and is on a movie for the whole of it, and we still enjoyed it.
He definitely held the movie. Here's the reason why this film isn't just some stagnant film. There's something that goes on, and it does build. It's just a slow burn. The submarine descends at the beginning of the film. We don't see the people in the space station yet until he ascends for the first time, but it descends. We learn some information through the speaker, and we do know that he has to take pictures. He starts to see what looks like a creature. He thinks it's just lying there and it's just bones. He has no idea. Then he irradiates part of the crew in frustration, but he doesn't know it. He doesn't realize it at the time. Then he descends again because he's now been tasked with taking samples. So his initial task is just taking pictures. Now his task is not only taking pictures, he has to take samples of the thing that he thinks is just lying there. But guess what? As we mentioned, when he goes back and tries to take a picture, verify that the quote-unquote skeleton is still sitting there, and then grab a sample of said skeleton, he realizes it's not there anymore. Guess why? Because it's alive and it's moving and it might be part of a much larger thing. We find out later. That's the cosmic horror aspect. Now he's on some journey to hunt down the quote-unquote skeleton or creature that he found previously. There's a different feel after he descends. Initially, it's like, okay, let me take pictures. Now it's, I got to find this thing. So it is about almost like a hunt, a chase. But there's a lot of sameness because he's still taking pictures. He's plotting a course, but he has a different purpose now. He's trying to get a sample and it's eluding him, which is also frustrating. Then things go haywire, as Louise said. He breaks the thing, and now he has no way of talking to people on the surface. He's not able to necessarily get certain pieces of information. There's a whole breach, which is what causes that frustration. But then, other plot point in the film is that he comes upon another vessel.
After he goes hunting for whatever being he took a picture of, he eventually finds it and rams it. And does get a sample, but also wrecks the ship in the process. The power goes down, and he's in darkness, and he needs to go for the first time in the crawl space to get the power going again. He also finds a note from a previous pilot, and finds out that the people at the station at Eden lied to him about him being the first to explore this. In the opening sequence where he's put underwater, and eventually takes the pictures and eventually gets hit, I think he loses power then, and he needs to go find a way to use a jumper or something to get power back so he can survive. And he finds a piece of paper, an authorized log from a previous pilot that indicates that, yeah, Simon's not the first to try to do this. There were others. And Eden basically lied to him about him being the first. That's how this movie handles exposition, which is very similar to how it's done in the game itself. That power failure, plus whatever damage he suffered, plus him having to bring some information back to the surface is why they bring him up. And that bit of exposition also tells him to cross the wires on the ship's computer. And he does that, and in crossing the wires, he gets access to some information in the ship, again, more exposition, that tells him something he wasn't supposed to know. He starts hearing some voices, a woman's voice, and she's kind of guiding him or telling him where to go to find what he's looking for, which I guess he assumes it was the creature at first.
Yeah, but what's interesting is where is he hearing this woman's voice from when the speaker and that form of communication was gone, because he had, in frustration, broken that.
Well, the movie doesn't show the wire being broken until later. It just show him banging on the speaker and then the speaker ceasing to emit sound. So when we hear the voices, we kind of assume that he didn't really destroy the thing, or maybe he just disabled the internal sound of the ship's computer telling him hull breach, the automated message. So when we hear the voices, initially we are supposed to think it could really be the surface talking through him. But it gets very weird because it doesn't match.
No, I always knew it didn't make sense. And it was actually guiding him toward a particular pace, and Ava would not have done that.
And it looks like almost like a being of light or some different kind of entity in the ocean of blood. And it's actually more than that. It's inside a cave, a really gigantic cave. He eventually gets there, and then he almost loses consciousness. All he knows is that he pops up on the surface, almost like in a vision, and is covered in blood, of course, and he can hardly move. And he sees this light. And now that he's in the cave, it's even harder to maneuver, and he's looking for the monster. And eventually he finds it, rams it, gets a sample, but in the process almost destroys the submarine, and loses consciousness. We had the vision sequence, which is one of the only times we see anything out of the Iron Lung itself.
This is where part of the cosmic horror comes in. When he takes these pictures, and the game is like this as well, it's very cool to see what looks like a monster approaching as he's taking pictures. That's very scary, and that's what makes this more of a horror film than a sci-fi film. The cosmic aspect is, what is this creature? This is so big. We're just seeing all aspects every time we take pictures. We're seeing different portions of this one massive cosmic creature.
So he has this vision, and he was guided to this being of light. It's like a starfish made of light. He was guided there. When he comes out of it, the oxygen's going down, the ship is damaged, the porthole has cracked. He finds himself staring at SM-8, the other ship that had been lost, and no one told him a thing about it.
Yeah, no one told him about it. Here he encounters...
He's like, what?
Through guidance.
Yeah. So
he finds this other ship.
He sees SM-8, then the ship's computer starts chirping, and he goes in and looks at the monitor, and they're having direct communication with SM-8. It's peer-to-peer communication. It's asking for a login and a password for credentials, but he doesn't have it. So he keeps trying different options, which you can do in the game as well, and none of them work. And he's like, oh my god, I found something. And after that encounter with the light, suddenly the speaker's fixed. Right. Suddenly the wire is plugged in again.
Miraculously, everything is fixed and working.
And now he can hear the surface again, and it's hard to understand them. He's deep into a cave, the signal's not great. And he says, I found SM-8. And they're like, what? Are you sure? It's like, yes, it's here. But he wouldn't let me log in. I'm sure if I had the credentials, I could download the information from the black box. So they drag him to the surface again. So that's the second ascent. And once he's up there, he says, I found SM-8. Here's the pictures. I found some other stuff there. Here's your sample. Let me out. I want my freedom.
My job is done. My work is done here.
Yeah, the more than you expected. He confronts them and says, and I know I'm not the first one.
Exactly. So that's why I think he found that later.
So going in the Iron Lung is basically an execution. I'm already a convict, but I'm innocent.
The note that he saw, though, also said, this is not an expedition. This is an execution.
Mm-hmm. If you want me to do this, you're going to have to set me free because I almost died again. So they said, okay, listen, we'll give you the credentials. You'll go back to SM-8, download the information from the black box, and we'll make this work. We will save you. This is our promise to you. By the way, the guy you irradiated is dying, but I will drag him out here to get you out of the sub if you make it up alive.
Right. And you will be free. That's the key. Freedom.
Yes. So he's sent down for a third and final time, and he knows exactly where the sub is. He goes to the sub, and he downloads all the stuff. And now he can look at the pictures that the other sub took, and it was an exploration ship. And he can read the logs, and he finds out that it's an ocean of human blood.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And now he has the information. He has whatever SM-8 discovered, which is incredibly important and valuable because there was an actual scientist on that ship with proper instruments, with proper hardware. So he makes contact with the surface again and says, I have it. But it turns out that in the process of trying to rescue them, they might have doomed themselves. Maybe they got too close to the moon. Maybe they're running out of fuel. Something happens where they're all at risk because of this.
Yeah, I didn't fully understand that.
And it's not clear, I think. And they can't really promise to save him anymore, just that they'll get the data together, any sacrifice won't be in vain. Now the situation is that he needs to get the black box. So for that, by the way, he needs to go in the crawl space again, but it's overrun with blood at this point because the blood from the moon is getting inside
Yeah,
the
we
submarine.
should say we started seeing blood seeping in little by little throughout the entire movie. And after there was a hull breach, a lot of the blood started seeping in, which makes perfect sense. Now that crawl space is clotted with blood. It's filling up, yeah.
So the crawl space is filling up with blood, and he has to jump in that thing. He's basically taking the black box out of the iron lung itself, now that the data has been transferred, and bringing it up so he can somehow deliver it to the surface. So that was life-threatening right there, and probably not very fun for Mark either to do that in real life with fake blood.
50,000 gallons of blood.
It was a world record, supposedly. So he comes up, and he has it, and he's now navigating out of the cave. But now, A creature, D creature, who knows, is kind of pissed and chasing after him and speaking through him. So you hear a cacophony of voices. You hear possibly the voices of the light, whatever they may be. You hear the voices of the surface through the magically fixed speaker. And you might hear the monster itself, the entity itself, saying, don't do it. You're not meant to have this information. You're not meant to have this. Your salvation lies here. This is mad dash to escape the cave. He makes it out, but the creature eventually gets him. And he actually is baiting it because he figures out this entity is not smart enough to know that it may kill me, it may destroy the iron lung, but the black box will survive.
Right. And we don't know what's going on with the people on the space station. Something's happening up there. And we don't have all that info. We don't have all that intel, remember? They're suffering. Something's happening.
Yeah. So plot-wise, that's basically how the movie ends. The entity or the monster crunches the iron lung into tiny little pieces. Goodbye, Simon. He dead. And the black box floats up to the surface. We actually see a final shot of the black box on the surface. And the movie ends basically with like, okay, everyone died. But the information is there.
But the black box survived. Maybe there's some hope for the future.
Yeah.
And the game, as we discussed before, you hunt for the creature because you want to find out what's going on.
And you find SMA.
And then the creature breaches the iron lung and basically eats you.
And kills you.
But we don't know. We have that wonderful jump scare at the end of the game where it's like, "Mah!" and it comes in, and that's definitely scary. We weren't expecting that at all. So it has some similarities, but obviously there's a lot more depth to the lore. There's a lot more going on as far as the audio, which I think is really cool. There are different sources of audio throughout the movie. We wanted to talk a little bit about theories. The cosmic Lovecraftian theory is that what he found was just the tip of the iceberg. Could have been the toe of the creature. Could have been much larger. I mean, that's very Lovecraftian. I don't remember the exact name of one of the stories where there was this horrible entity, and then you realized it was only the toe of this massive creature. We don't know where the moons came from. The moons could be part of the creature itself. We don't know what's going on. They could be gods. There are so many interesting ideas. The quiet rapture, a lot of people who have more of a religious background have been weighing in on that. There's a political aspect where there was this protest on filament.
There's something about the last tree in the whole world, then the tree dies, and then I think filament was around Mars, and Mars pops out of existence.
So there was an eco element to the fact that there was a tree there.
Represents the tree of life.
Yeah, there we go. So there's that religious aspect again. Why did everything blink out of existence? Or at least, why did the stars and planets blink out of existence? It's not like the universe is gone. The universe is there. Space is there. And actually, our solar system is, quote unquote, no longer in existence because there are no planets, no sun, no moon, there are no stars. That means that there are other systems that are gone.
Yeah, I think one way to read this, what if we consider that Eden was all of history from the beginning till now?
You mean the space station Eden?
All of it is Eden. What if it literally our thirst for knowledge made us be expelled from Eden? It's almost as the entire creation is the Garden of Eden. And that whole thing was a warning for humanity not to taste the fruit of knowledge. And if you think about the creature in the ocean of blood, it could be represented by the serpent.
Yeah.
It could be temptation.
It is serpent-like.
And he is using his free will, which is not that free because he's a convict, to seek knowledge. And he finds such knowledge, and in finding that knowledge, he dies. All of existence, all of history is the Garden of Eden. We're digging ourselves out of Eden little by little by exploring space, by destroying the environment, by doing this, by doing that. I'm saying it could be a metaphor for that. And that's why we are being expelled from the Garden of Eden. How? Through the quiet rapture. Entire planets are going away. Right. The stars are going away. 99% of humanity disappears. Isn't that not what happens when Adam and Eve get kicked out of the Garden of Eden?
You're using a cosmic theory of what Eden is. So you're saying even though it's just the name of a space station, you're saying that that's just a hint, that's a clue that everything, all this time, has been Eden. And even though we have a story about Eden, that story was a warning, and we're really still in Eden. And we haven't experienced end of days. And once we do, that will be the true point at which we were trying to get knowledge. The knowledge is what ends everything, correct? Is
Yeah.
that so? You're saying that even after the quiet rapture, we still have an opportunity to be making the quote unquote mistake we make by trying to get knowledge in the Garden of Eden? I would think that at the moment of the quiet rapture, this all goes out the window.
So, for example, the Bible says that humanity started at the Garden of Eden, that God made Adam and Eve, and that they could eat from all the trees and all the fruit in the Garden of Eden, but it was one tree they could not. That was the tree of knowledge. So Eve corrupts Adam and gets him to do it, and they get expelled from the Garden of Eden. And after that, somehow, the actual universe happens, and everything else happens. I'm just postulating that maybe the idea here is that, like Jeannie said just earlier, the myth of the Garden of Eden was a warning for humanity. That this world right now, or the world in the game obviously, and the world in the movie, is that Eden. Is probably not even our reality. There's nothing in this that says that's the same universe as we inhabit.
Exactly. We don't even know. Although the preamble does act as if it's our world, but who knows?
Doesn't have to
be anything.
So if we think that they're taking the idea of an Eden literally to the point where they name a space station after it, but it really means existence as we know it in that world, and that we somehow do something incredibly wrong at some point, seeking knowledge through the wrong way, and then we get punished for it. And then everyone gets kicked out of that Eden, they go into yet another universe, but maybe they'll have another chance of learning and growing. And maybe that demigod that stayed behind is the ruler of the world, now that the quiet rapture has started. So one of the questions that the movie asks, also the game, is where does all the human blood come from? And most people agree that the human blood is from all the people that died. So it's almost as if they were sacrificed. Their blood is the blood of these moons, and there's more than one with blood, supposedly. We were barely able to keep up because we didn't do any kind of prior research. We went into this completely blind.
We always do. We are much more familiar with the game now, so that helps. But of course, the lore has been expanded upon since the game was created.
Exactly. And even the developer has updated the game with more stuff. Mm-hmm. So, for example, that terminal, there was barely anything on it if there even was a terminal in the original release. He had more content to the terminal. He had a different ways to interact with the terminal.
Right, that's
and
true.
And to get logs out of it. So it's very, very smart. If we look at the Lovecraftian aspects, it's kind of obvious. Us being playthings of elder gods that can squeeze us like we kill an ant. And the ants being, set on fire by some giant creature. And for us, we're just setting fire to an anthill. And for the ants, it's the extinction event.
Why did this happen now? We can speculate. Why did the quiet rapture happen when it did? Did we just start exploring a little too much? And they're like, yep, that anthill needs to be stomped on. Let's get rid of the stars and the planets. And then, of course, not accounting for the fact that you're not wiping out the entire human race because there they are in space stations. So there are a few left. And then it's sort of, oh, wait, what are you doing here? Why are you descending into our ocean of blood? We're going to get you. And maybe all the humans that were killed during this quiet rapture or obliterated, the blood somehow ended up on this moon, which appeared out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. But again, it could be the fingernail of a larger creature. Mm-hmm. We don't know what these moons are. I don't know why I thought there were 5 moons. I might be completely wrong, but if we see it as a humanoid creature, which they never should be anyway, but you could have one finger or one fingernail per moon, and that would be only the fingernails of the hand of this gigantic creature. That could be the cosmic horror aspect. But I think it's up for speculation for a reason. It's not like David Szymanski is going to say, well, this is what I'm talking about here. I'm going to explain everything. I think the idea is let's speculate and interpret it the way we'd like to.
And there's also the possibility that there is a leftover element of human consciousness that stayed behind and guided him toward that light being, for example, in the ocean of blood. Maybe because they wanted to guide him also to the sub, to SM8. There's a situation where what if humanity sought knowledge above all else, ignoring other things that are important like love and compassion and growing as a species. And that's why there was a deal made where the ones who failed got taken somewhere else, and the ones who stayed will be used for a different purpose? What if now the universe of the game and the movie are owned, quote unquote, by a different entity? If you're going to think in terms of Christianity, you could think it was the devil, Lucifer, any kind of entity that's basically the opposite of God. And that's why there are moons filled with human blood. So maybe this moon with an ocean of blood belongs to this entity. And that's why the pesky humans exploring it and trying to find truth are meant to be smashed and squeezed and stopped. It's like an ant biting your little toe. You're going to get pissed at the end. I know I get pissed off. And you're going to try to crunch it. For the ant, it might not even know what it's doing. So just like there's a segment of humanity that disappeared out into thin air and is being taken somewhere else, beyond the veil, which is the achievement when you complete the game, there's also the parcel of humanity that stayed behind, and they're still fighting. Maybe there's something special for them too when they pass. Maybe Simon and the person who was in SM8, they get to see a different state of existence after this. They have passed their test. The tribulations encountered by the people who just blinked out of existence, and encountered by the scientists in SM8, and encountered by Simon, and encountered by Ava, are all different. They're all different trials for different purposes. So I think that's what this movie means, and the game itself. It's saying that we made a mistake somewhere, we got collectively punished as a species on a universal scale. Intelligent life, non-intelligent life, rocks, everything is gone. But there's something beyond the veil. And maybe searching for answers, even when all hope is lost, will bring you a different ending as well. So when Simon sacrifices himself for the black box to survive, for the snippet of truth to come to the surface, he's redeeming himself. He's redeeming the human race in a way. So maybe God and the devil are both watching. That's why I think that a metaphor of this whole universe of the Iron Lung game and the Iron Lung movie being Eden, the true Eden, I think makes a lot of sense. Because being kicked out of Eden is the same as seeing your stars and your planets disappear.
Anybody that's into Lovecraft should really see this film, and I would love to hear their take on it because it really feels like that type of a story to me. All right, so let's do our final impressions if you'd like. Would you like to do
Sure.
that? Okay. I felt that it was a valiant effort. Markiplier did an amazing job. He really held it together. It was not an easy role. As I had said earlier, if he had floundered on this, it would have tanked the whole movie. It doesn't matter how many fans you have. If a movie's bad, it's bad. And it wasn't. So he did a remarkable job on the acting front. I was impressed with the sound. I know there's been a lot of controversy over that, but I really do think that having all these different voices, you wonder if you're hallucinating. You wonder if the character's hallucinating. You wonder why these wires all of a sudden are miraculously healed, so to speak, and your communication device works again. That's also interesting. It was well directed. I do feel like at times I wasn't sure where things were coming from. As we talked about earlier, there was one side of the sub for the porthole, then there was another where the button was, then there was the screen, then there was the terminal, and there were all these different things, and the navigation elements. The steampunk aspect was really cool. The production design really worked. The sense of dread. If you hadn't played the game or didn't know about the game, I think that the surprise of seeing these quote-unquote X-rayed sketch-like elements that did look very eldritch. They were fuzzy, so you weren't sure what you were looking at. And I love that concept. Seeing the approach of the creature and then hearing the moans and other aspects, that was great. And of course, all the blood toward the end. 50,000 gallons of blood, that really worked. It was actual blood. Human blood. No.
Yeah, no.
Raided a bunch of hospitals to find that. I did want to say that during maybe the first third, or maybe just smack in the middle of the movie, I feel like it could have been cut a little bit. Some people are saying 30 minutes. I say maybe 20.
15.
Maybe 15, 20. Luis and I both in the theater, we started hallucinating ourselves. When the character was hallucinating, we thought, are we seeing other characters on the submarine? I was hallucinating, and I feel like part of it is I got a little tired at one point, probably in the middle of the film. And Luis said that, did you say you almost fell asleep?
Twice. I definitely felt the pacing or lack thereof. There was a big problem about 40 minutes in, maybe 45. I mean, it's after diving for the second time and looking for the creature that he took pictures of. And I kind of micro-napped like twice. And I just closed my eyes, but I was hearing it, and I opened them immediately. And I was like, oh my God, this is low. But then it starts to really pick up. I think it's the time where he gets attacked inside the cave during the second dive, and he rams the creature, and there's the whole breach alert, whole breach alert, and he bangs the speaker. I think that's when I woke up for good, and I was like, okay, I'm not sleepy anymore. I'm going to be able to follow this whole thing through now, and it did. I think this is an incredible film. Is it perfect? No. Is he an amazing actor? No. I think he put in a very solid effort, very solid, nearing greatness a couple times, but also other times being kind of so straddling the line there. But for an amateur, it's just genius.
Yeah.
And the production pays homage to the game in a respectful manner and translates it very faithfully to film. The effects are great. Most of them are practical effects with blood. It's very immersive. Sound design is impeccable. You're not meant to understand all the voices. You're supposed to be as disoriented as
Don't try
he
to
is.
understand all the voices, please.
It's not that it was a cheap job. If there's one guy that understands sound, it's Mark, because he's been handling his own sound on his YouTube channel for more than a decade now, so he knows what it means to understand when someone's speaking. Something needs to be heard, it needs to be heard. So we think it's 100% done on purpose. And the composer was actually in studio with them with a laptop and his station, composing music as he watched the movie being made through a monitor, which is awesome. So perfect music that I actually want to hear again, and I keep forgetting, but I want to hear it again.
Soundtrack.
Yeah, it's
OST.
on Spotify. Very self-assured direction, doing something very hard, which is to shoot in an enclosed space with one single actor, who happens to be himself. How hard is this?
It's like a play.
Yeah. Editing, good, not great. It lags. It's not propulsive enough at certain
That's just
point.
a warning for everybody. There will be a lull, but just move through it because it really speeds up.
And it's really inspired on the game itself, which Jeannie said earlier, because in the game early on, you're given this map with pre-marked locations in the map itself. And you were supposed to, one by one, in any order you can come up with.
Map it out.
You only start hearing the sounds of the creature and all the other creepy stuff later.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah, it's literally just you going from coordinate to coordinate, trying not to hit the walls. That's
Right.
it. So you're meant to be kind of, quote unquote, bored at a certain point.
Well, he was faithful to the game, and I think that's really important. It was a tough job to be faithful to a game that does have a lot of redundancy in it for a reason. It's a strategic game where you go through a certain process and certain tasks. I'm a big fan of strategy and resource management and task-driven games, so I was totally cool with that. But I understand that it's harder to make that into a film. You don't want to make a film where you're just watching someone do a let's play, which is not what it is. He did a good job at that, but he could have cut part of that out. That's what we're saying.
Now, the gore is excellent when he has to attach to the iron lung itself because the blood got in the ship and the blood seems to have some sort of a consciousness. It's trying to hold him in place and not let him get the black box. So at some point he puts his hand on the side of the ship and the blood goes through his hand and attaches to him and he needs to rip his arm off to go and get the black box, I think.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, we forgot to talk about that. So that's so well done when he rips his arm off and he's like suffering and he's in pain and he still has this mission he needs to achieve. It's so well done for a first-time filmmaker. Tiny $3 million budget.
Yeah.
This is a massive achievement. Anyone who doesn't see this and something that's going to transform the film industry doesn't know what they're talking about. It might even transform the game industry. Why? Because now if you make an indie game with a really cool story, with awesome characters, with an intriguing world, you can expect some indie filmmaker to connect with you, speaking as equals, and bringing you to the silver screen. And you can expect gamers to go and give their time and their money to celebrate that on the big screen. That's very different than big studios licensing Uncharted and making a movie about it. Even Mortal Kombat didn't escape unscathed. There was no blood in Mortal Kombat. It was PG-13. Now Warner's trying to fix it with the new ones. But yeah, we're entering a new world for filmmaking, a new world for game development. So while the gigantic publishers and studios are going downhill and going bankrupt, indies are strong. And now indie filmmakers are showing the path, just like in the late 60s to early 70s. It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's a very important statement. It's going to change the industry, I think, dramatically. We already were seeing those changes start to happen, and now I think we've sealed the deal with this particular film. It's a great story. I've been hearing a lot of talk about people adopting other video games, doing very small films, using their own money. with a very small cast, limited sets, and stuff like that. The fact that this film was so well received is a very important step in that direction. Something about the overall mood of the film, I would call it a mood piece in a lot of ways. When you think about it, there's a lot of lore behind this film that isn't necessarily all spelled out, but you're working with a lot of information, backstory and lore that you don't necessarily share with the audience. So having that at your disposal that you don't reveal is always tricky. And I think Markiplier did a really good job with that. Moon was similar in some ways, where you have pretty much one character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Small budget.
Small budget, one character, a tour de force of sorts.
I gotta rewatch it.
Yeah, I would like to rewatch it myself. But that idea of being enclosed, there's a claustrophobic element, there's a moody element, there's a sense of dread, there's this idea of the creature coming closer, and then the sound really helped. I would say that having this limited concept, it's like you're in the theater enclosed in your own iron lung. That's why I think it was really cool to see it in the theater, because you're in there and everybody was really quiet while watching this. I think people were really getting into it. And then at the end, there was a lot of cheers and laughter and clapping and excitement. I think partially because of the feat we witnessed, but also almost a relief because it was such an enclosed film. I don't know why I always think of this, but I think of The Exorcist in some ways. People might not remember, a lot of it took place in the bedroom. Linda Blair, Max von Sydow, and Ellen Burstyn at times were trying to exorcise the demons. I saw a revival screening of this film and I was like, whoa, it's got a lot of claustrophobic elements as well. And everybody's hushed. A lot of it takes place in that room and it's like a play. So I had a bit of that feeling at times with Iron Lung, where you're in the Iron Lung. You're in an enclosed space, you're in this theater, you're not able to see anything else around you. And you're experiencing what Simon, in a way, is experiencing, as far as sort of a claustrophobic element, did I hear that? Did I hear that? And I can tell you, when we watched Markiplier play the game, it was a similar thing where, wait, did I hear that? Did I hear that moan? Did I hear that creature? I'm not sure. You almost feel like you're hallucinating. And that really works well in this film. So see it in the theater if you can.
Yeah, if you can catch a screening, go do it. This is one of those once in a generation events.
Yeah. And just be aware of the lull that we're talking about. Move through the lull. It'll be worth it.
Get a good night's sleep the night before.
Don't nod off.
Don't watch it too late at night or too early. If you're ready for some existential dread, you're going to love this.
Are we ready to close?
Yes, we are.
All right. I guess it's time to bid you adieu. Bye.
For now.
now. Toodaloo. Beep.